Hey everybody, welcome to our fifth episode of Shaman and the Scribe. My name is Ali Kaden. I'm an author of thriller and esoteric fiction, and I'm here with my good friend Brendon.
Hey everyone, I'm Brendon. I'm a shaman, Reiki master, and spiritual consultant. And today we have our friend Derek Ebrecht on to join us for this episode. Welcome, Derek.
Hello, good to be here.
It's good to have you.
Looking forward to this.
We are too.
We're coming off of a men's retreat that we all know each other from and attend, and I think we all had some pretty powerful experiences. And so I thought maybe we could start this by giving listeners a little context and then just talking a little bit about how our experiences went, anything that we came away with.
I can chime in first. Yeah, so it's interesting because we were talking a little before we got on here. It was like, how do we know each other? And Ali, I met you first about a year and a half ago. Has it been 2 years? It might be close to 2 years. I don't know.
Almost
either a year. It was
almost 2 years now.
Yeah, 2 years. Yeah, which was a retreat of sorts at that time too. And you introduced me to Brendon a little while later. Actually, you mentioned him pretty within that year, but we didn't really connect about him more until later. As far as the last one that we were at, it just felt very one with everything, and then even a stronger pull with the three of us. I just had a sense leaving there that I was meant to do something with the two of you, and you had already started working together on some level. So, I was excited when you asked me to be on this episode and see where things go. I didn't quite have a vision as to what that looked like at the time. It definitely has something to do around spirituality and bringing that to the world on some level. Because there's a lot of love and light and beauty in that, and peace. That's actually a big theme of my life in the last couple of years has been peace, and whatever I can do to help spread that is where my life feels like it's shifting to. That's the gist of what I got from that.
Thank you. Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit in the last episode, that we feel what you feel, that there's something happening, something being built around us and underneath us, and it has to do with spirituality, and it has to do with bringing it to a wider audience. The funny thing is we don't know what it is. We don't know what the movement is or what the idea necessarily is. But in spirituality, there's this idea that we're being led, that we're being guided. A lot of our job is to go with the flow, or to follow, to receive, to allow. And so it's very cool that we're here feeling that same thing without any specific objective other than, like you said, to share spirituality.
During that night, especially, it amplified a feeling of familiarity with both of you, and I also had a deep sense of shared mission. And Derek really vocalized that at the retreat when he vocalized it. I was really happy that he did, because I was feeling it so strongly too.
I remember.
And then you described it as something more specific, Ali, and that was very cool too.
Well, no, I think well, yeah, I had my little speech, but Derek used the word ancestral. And that's the word that resonates with how that evening felt. That we had come together for a shared purpose, and that in some way, in some form, in some time, we had done this before. We had come together and shared this exact same purpose, and there was a very strong feeling of remembering rather than experiencing for the first time.
Yeah, sort of like deja vu.
Yeah.
And the other feeling I had around it was something of a quest. When I think of a quest, I think of something like a J.R. Tolkien, Hobbit type of quest, not quite good and evil like that, but just something that is far reaching. I find right now, and we were saying this a little beforehand, this right now time seems to be shifting for me personally, and maybe others too. And it's almost this past year, almost, I felt like I've lived a couple of different lives. It's just time is stretched, and then it's also shrunk, and then there's other times where at times things feel timeless. Like after that retreat, the next day, I thought it was a different day. I didn't realize what day it was, and when I was talking to somebody, they said, "I'm going to do this." I'm like, "That's a weekend thing. Tomorrow's Monday." They're like, "No, tomorrow's Sunday." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, it is." So it's just it's a fun place to be. It's a fun place to be. The other thing I mentioned to you was, being as opposed to doing. Um, Even with that happening, I'm doing a lot, but it's just flowy. It's not forced. It's just things are getting done that are in my peripheral that need to happen, and it's been a really fun couple of months in that space. So, and I'm looking forward to more of it. And I've had confirmation just from other outside things showing me, yeah, you're on the right path. The intuition is kicking in, and not fully formed yet as far as what's next, but it's like one little step at a time. And I'm looking forward to how that unfolds over the next months and years, we'll say.
I feel like a lot of people are experiencing anomalies with their experience of time. I would say ever since we met, I've become oddly fascinated with the ancient past, with history, and not details of history, but feeling emotionally connected to various stages of humanity, and feeling connected to very abstract things like evolution. Feeling that this body that I'm sitting in is the product of millions of years of evolution, and that happened for me to be sitting here. And it's a sense of awe and a sense of gratitude. And it messes with my sense of time a little bit, because I'm in that respect, not just finite me here and now, but connected to everything, like you were saying.
I also find it interesting that you're so well traveled. I don't know if you were born in Egypt, but you're from Egypt, and there's a connection there. Talk about ancient. But you've spent time in India, you spent time in various parts of the United States, so you bring a well-roundedness to your knowing and to your being, that I enjoy. And you also have this quality of childlike curiosity that I just find very endearing, and it gets my curiosity juices flowing, because I just see the look of wonder in your eyes at times, and it's like, what's really going on inside? It's fun to watch, and which kind of allows me to just go to that space too. And I will say the last 5 to 7 years, I've had a lot more curiosity than I did compared to my younger self. So it's a fun place to come from, and powerful, because it allows for whatever it is, as opposed to judging a thing and putting a label on it from something of the past, and saying, because the other thing that feels true to me right now is like, this is new. Everything right now is on some level new. Not new almost in an old way, like you were saying, like it's connected to other timelines, almost like my past has been in the last couple of years. It feels like some of my past has been rewritten, and it's interesting. It's a different perspective, and I find it interesting when I bump into somebody that's very rigid now and has a hard time being open to something that might be outside of their box, the way they're seeing a thing, or their filters that they see it through. And I'm like, and I kind of take a moment when I bump into that, and I just go, oh, okay, that's where you're hanging. That's okay. I certainly don't know a lot. That's actually one of the things I really appreciate about myself. I know almost nothing compared to what there is to know. And from that place, I have allowed in the last several years things to happen easier. And I think that's one of the reasons I met you, which then led me to Brendon, which then that also opened up a lot, a world as well. His way of working with people, there isn't a lot of language. There's a lot of energy. And it's been an interesting 7 or so months since I've met him. And he comes from love and no judgment, reflecting, He's really good at reflecting. And sometimes that reflection isn't even in, like I said, words. It's just being there, and with the energy that flows, it comes to my own mind, and so it's just a fun place to be. I've never been more excited in my life to be alive. I mean, I am just so grateful for being in this place right here and now. It's so beautiful. The last time I hung out with Brendon, I started crying at how beautiful this world is. It's just amazing. And I know there's not all beauty here. The reason why we know there's beauty here is because we have the contrast of what isn't. And I appreciate that too, especially my own things that I would have judged at one point or another that were negative or harsh or hard. I'm just grateful for it all. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to what's, whatever's next. And also, just for my own sanity, just, thinking about the words I use and, keeping them on a positive level, again, acknowledging what could be construed as negative and knowing it's possible or it's there. But on the other hand, just, not growing up, but waking up grateful and just ready to, attack the day in a fun, playful, curious place, as opposed to, I got to get a XYZ done, a million things done in the next 12 hours, or else I'm not fulfilled, or I've not completed what I was meant to do this day. Anyhow, I'll stop it there. It's been fun for a while now, and I'm really grateful for that.
There's so much that you said that I want to respond to. That's so cool. And I mean, first of all, thank you, because you gave me some compliments. I am well traveled and fairly well read, and I do experience a lot of awe, and I'm happy, and I'm the happiest I've ever been, similar to what you said. But I wasn't always that way, and when you met me, I was not that way. And whether you know it or not, you contributed a great deal to me being in a state of awe and childlike curiosity, because I came up all constricted and tied up when I first attended those events. And you're a big guy like me, and you're very sensitive. And you bring those two things together very nicely and very well. And it's like, oh, that when I see you, I'm like, that's what a man is supposed to be. You're supposed to be big and masculine and a protector, but have also a sensitive side. And you're not afraid of showing the sensitive side. And it gave me permission to show my sensitive side, which is where the awe comes from, because it's not by intellectualizing my experience that I find it beautiful. It's really by zooming out and just focusing on how things feel and how things flow through you, that I began to feel awe in life instead of dread, and and more childlike wonder instead of anxiety. And then Mr. Shaman, Mr. Brendon, coming, our friend calls you Mr. Shaman, coming to see you, exactly like Derek said, that you teach in a wordless way that is more about energy and reflecting, and it does feel like love, and it does feel like truth. And when I finally understood that what I'm looking for does not come at the end of a long line of intellectual calculation or reasoning or deliberation. Like, I'm not trying to figure anything out. What I was looking for was a state of being, an experience. And the work we do together definitely brought me to that realization, which brings me to the larger place of, I want to be part of spirituality. I want to be present. I want to pass this gift on to others, and allow, grind less and allow a lot more.
Something I know about working in the light is that time seems to disappear. That's one of the signs that it's good. You're in a good space when you completely lose sense of time. Thank you both for the kind things you said about working with me. And I think that, the only thing that I see that was maybe missing is the state of love that we sit in when we work together. It brings us into it and connects us to that timeless part of ourselves that has a memory of past lives and incarnations on Earth or maybe other places. Even just connecting now, I'm very aware of the thread that connects us. During that retreat, there was a moment, I forget what was happening for me. I looked up and big Derek's there standing with his hand out, and he pulled me off the couch and gave me a 20-minute long hug. Do you remember that, Derek?
Oh yeah, 100%. I remember saying to myself, I'm not going to be the one to let go. Yeah, no, it was good because it was just a deep appreciation and love and connection that was there. I think humanity really needs a lot more of. One of the things, I think I've told you this, and I'm starting to get a little weepy. You know, there's levels of knowing a thing, and then there's levels of knowing a thing. And experience in this 3D realm allows us to experience things that we may call uncomfortable, negative, whatever, that when it's all said and done, or the realization comes through from whatever lesson we were supposed to get from that. It's like this year I got even clearer of how needed love, compassion, and kindness is, and it's like another level or two or three deeper. Sometimes I can just sit and watch people go by, and I just have nothing but appreciation for their humanity, and have no idea what they may have gone through or going through, and just know that they are or have experienced something that love and compassion could be used on some level. And it's definitely a piece of why I incarnated into this lifetime, was to have that realization get deeper. And it's a beautiful thing. So that hug that I gave was a piece of that. And it was just me extending my love and compassion to you for the work that you do, and also for the work you've done to get to where you are, and just appreciate that.
Thank you. And thank you for weeping, for your openness. And I think that's something I really admire about you, is your true masculinity, your ability to hold experience and express emotion, something that a lot of men in our culture are beyond afraid of. I mean, they just don't know what to do with emotions, especially ones that make us weep. So I think you set a really good example, and that love, compassion, and what was the third?
Kindness.
And kindness. Yeah, that feels like something, part of the thread that connects us, and maybe what we're embarking on together.
What all that makes me think about is what our individual paths were leading up to this point, because we all come from different religious traditions and cultures and locations, and we're all here, and so on some level, each one of our unique paths led us to the same destination, which is spirituality, retreats, but then also having this conversation. And for me, part of arriving here has a lot to do with sharing the idea that spirituality is more about being present to what is and less about affiliation, and that was a big turning point in my life when I realized spirituality has, in my opinion, almost nothing to do with affiliation. It doesn't matter what I call myself. It doesn't matter which place of worship I go to, because the whole planet is a place of worship. Like my body is a place of worship, if I allow it to be. And I think a world where that's a little bit more accepted, where the lines blur between one spiritual tradition and the other, would bring about a lot more peace and a lot more kindness and a lot more compassion, because we would be all one. We would, and I always think of funny examples of how all of humanity could realize that. And what comes to mind is there's a giant meteor, flying at Earth, and NASA didn't catch it, and it's going to wipe us out. And you can see it from northern, southern hemisphere. It doesn't matter. Like, we could see this meteor coming for us, and we know it's all over. Aren't we all throwing up our hands in prayer to the same thing and asking for deliverance from the same thing? Like in a moment like that, the unity of where we are and what we're doing and what we're feeling, like, would just be apparent. And I hope that the world can get there without a giant meteor flying towards us.
It would reveal the truth that we're all one. I think that, like, most traditions are trying to reflect that, and it's those affiliations with groups or organizations that create an illusion of separation.
And I think there's nothing wrong with the groups. I say that I'm Muslim. I grew up in the Islamic tradition. It didn't make religion in general didn't make a lot of sense to me until I went to India and learned about Eastern spirituality. And when I began to apply some of those concepts back to traditional religion, things opened up. When I started looking at things as experientially instead of dogmatically. And I think we've all had a story like that where we realize that affiliation and sort of us versus them mentality isn't the right way to go about this. Have we not?
That's the illusion, right? That we are separate, when we're really all one, just experiencing it through different lenses. That's another, thing I've come to terms with in the last 5 or so years. And it's an interesting thing. While we were sitting there, it made me started thinking a little bit about the Hermetic principles, and I don't remember all 7 of them off the top of my head. But the first one is all is mind, all is mental. So a lot of what our perception is what our reality is. And I think when you get to a place of love and kindness, and that's your reality, that you have compassion. That's a place where compassion comes in, because if you see someone in pain or you feel their pain, or you can feel that with them. There are times, like, I'll be in a line and I'll look at somebody else and I'll just feel from their energy and from their stance, they're in a really tough spot at the moment, that they don't trust, that there's something there. I don't know what it is, and I don't know what the words that they might use are, but like, especially with a lot of young people, like, they just can't look you in the eye these days. And at times, not always, sometimes that's just a social awkwardness that seems to be prevalent now, especially after COVID and everybody was indoors away from people for a couple of years. But there are other times where you could just sort of feel the energy, that there's something, and it's a pain, it's hurt. And that a lot of what divides us is, the fact that we don't have that pain met in a way that it gets healed, or there's a healing to it. And then it stays with us for a long time. And the longer it stays with us, it permeates and becomes beliefs of lack and non-trust and scarcity. And the world is out to get me, as opposed to the world is there for my highest and best good, which is where I try to be every day. It's just one of the things that, there are times I'm like, I've had moments of, like, I wish I had taken a minute or two to ask how they were doing. And, to some degree, there may be some reflection. I know I've gotten this from Brendon too. It's like, well, what did that person reflect in me? Because we, often what we see out in the world is a projection of ourselves on some level. So there may be a piece there. It's like, even, one of the places that we have in common is in real estate, and I manage and own some property. And I have to say, I wasn't necessarily the best tenant when I was a young man. I struggled, and I didn't always pay my rent on time. So there's times when people are in the same boat. I even rented a unit to a young man, and he reminds me of myself in so many ways. He's in his early 20s, and he's late every single month. He's got some excuse, and he's usually lying around it. And I just understand that that's where he is. I don't try to label it. I don't try to change it. I just encourage him to be the best he can be. And eventually he pays me. It's, not usually more than 2 weeks late, but, actually this month was later. Anyhow, it is what it is. At the end of the world, it's at the end of the world. At the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. Right. It's just where his consciousness is at the moment. And I, try to have grace and understanding for that. As well as I appreciate it when others have it for me. I don't always keep my shit together. Sometimes I have little mini breakdowns, and sometimes people have grace for that for me too, which makes me think of a time a couple of years ago when I was purging a lot of anger, and I was in a CVS and I was not in a good mood and struggling to check out, and was not the kindest person to the attendant that was there, the clerk, that couldn't get to me in the time frame that I would have liked to have been gotten to. And there was a woman that was standing next to me and looked me straight in the eye and said, "Dude, you need to smoke some weed." I'm like, and I just, I reflect on that every once in a while. Like, okay, I was having a bad day. That was a bad day. I was not the kindest person I could have been.
And she saw you. She saw your suffering.
Yes.
And kind of told you, like, oh, this guy's tense. He needs to relax.
You need to chill out, man. And we all have those moments, some more than others, or some more often, depending on where we are in life. It's just, coming from a place of love. Like, I wake up and I meditate around love and how to, the word is escaping me, but just be that for the day. And the more I do that, the better the day usually is, and the more that happens, the more I allow, again, back to curiosity. I'm open to what is, as opposed to what I think something is. Anyways, it's an interesting, it's a fun place to be. Yeah. I don't know. I forget where we even started from all that, but that's kind of where I riffed off to.
I'm reminded of a Vedic teaching. I believe it's from the book Elam Andra. I'm paraphrasing. The quote is, "What evil can come to one who sees himself in others and others in himself?"
Yeah.
All is one.
Yeah.
Only.
Yeah, I had a little mirror this week. I have some rentals that I'm working on getting filled, and I responded to somebody's information they gave me, because I asked same questions of everybody so that there's no discrimination, but some of them are financial, earning more than 3 times the rent, and what their credit situation's like. And I had a young woman who you could tell was, just was young. She, in her bio, she said, this will be my first time renting, and from my family's house, or something along those lines. And her credit is just not where it needs to be for us, qualifications, as well as her income. And I tried to, and sometimes when you write something, it doesn't come across in the same way as there's no tone involved. But not only that, apparently I misspelled something. What I tried to say was, you may be in a situation where right now you need to rent a room while you build up your credit and work on more income. The word room didn't end up in there. I don't know, because I was doing it on my phone. My thumbs might have hit the wrong letters, and it auto-corrected to, "You may need to rent a tent." And she took great offense to me saying I needed to get a tent. It wasn't my intention, but that's what I said, because I looked at it later. And she wrote back, "That's very rude of you to say I need to rent a tent." And I realized that there was a gaffe. And as soon as I did, which was probably an hour plus after she responded to me, I apologized and said what I meant to say, and I wished her well, blah, 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 blah. Well, that wasn't the end of it. Like 30 minutes later, I get a call from a young man who was very upset that I told his girlfriend to rent a tent. And I said to him, I did respond afterwards, and I apologized and said I made a mistake. And he wasn't in the headspace to hear what I was saying. He just wasn't there, and he was angry, and he wanted to right the wrong of me being rude. I just found that interesting that happened, because that hasn't happened in a long time. And normally I wouldn't even respond to somebody that doesn't come even near qualifying. I would just let it go. But anyways, I must have needed it that day. I must have needed to hear that and feel something there. I'm not quite sure what it is yet, but I hope that they were able to get past that. I don't know, but either way, that's been on my mind. That happened like 2 or 3 days ago, and it's been on my mind a couple of times, because the way he left it was somewhat threatening. Although I don't think he has a way of figuring out where I live. So I'm just hoping he came to terms with it. It's just interesting to see where people could be, which leads me to another story where a time I was going into an apartment in a not so great area of Worcester, Massachusetts, and someone complimented me on a jacket I was wearing. I was so focused on getting in and out of the apartment for what I had to do this was years ago, that I didn't hear him even talking to me because there were so many people in the room. And he took great offense for me not acknowledging his compliment. And this is the type of place you could get hurt in this neighborhood. That's the kind of neighborhood it was in. And I'm like, it's just amazing how quick we can be to judge a thing and not even realize what's going on in another person's mind. Of course, we're not mind readers. We can't know what's happening for another person. But in my mind, it's like, I'm a white guy in a not so great neighborhood, and I want in and out of this apartment as quick as possible. I was going in to fix something. And so I was just so focused on getting the job done as opposed to being as I entered and being open to conversation. And that's just where I was. This is probably 7 or 8 years ago. And that's one little microcosm in the world, right? I mean, think about that on a grander scale, stuff that happens, where wars start over this sort of thing.
From a place of fear.
Yes, exactly.
And
Total
separation.
Fear. Yes, exactly. That's yes. And it's, as I look in my life, in my past, in my early years, there was a lot of fear, a lot of lack, a lot of scarcity. And I've told this to you, and I don't mean to usurp this whole conversation. I just feel like it needs to come out. But the first thing that had to shift toward a more open mindset and love, kindness, and compassion was gratitude. Just taking on a gratitude practice for a couple of years of writing at least 3 things down a day that were different. And I did that for a while, that every day was different. And then I probably started repeating a little bit at some point. And that just led into not just writing it down, but just having the mindset of gratitude, which then morphed into gratitude for not even the stuff that I didn't enjoy, which morphed into gratitude for no matter, not always, because there are moments I don't always enjoy the cold rain. But for the most part, I'm grateful that it snowed today and there's more water on the earth that will, help with, the local fires that have been happening for the last several months, as well as be better for growing come the spring, that sort of a thing. And that's just, that in itself was a miracle. The gratitude is such a miracle. It just blows my mind. How simple a little thing. And my life, and it took a few years, but it shifted. And we had this conversation the other day. I didn't understand. It was the other day we were literally just sitting with each other, and I had the thought, I'm a great manifester. The past manifestations were a lot of lack and scarcity and such, and now manifestations are just stuff beyond my wildest dreams with ease, as opposed to grinding and doing more. And it's just, I'm just in awe of this realm and what's capable here. It's just, every day I'm blown away by it. It's just so, beautiful is one word, but just amazing. Again, back to the Hermetic principle of all is mind, how powerful that shift over time has changed my life, never mind other people that have come to similar conclusions, and others that have had it early on, and just come from a place of magic and miracles, which I'm so damn grateful for that too. It's just, anyways, I don't know if there's anything you guys want to take from there, but it's been pretty amazing, the last several years.
No, there was so much there that was awesome to hear. It made me think of a time in my life. I went to India as a young man, just after being a teenager, and my aunt was going to India at this time to visit a guru and stay at the ashram, and I went with her and I loved it. I was really interested in learning about Eastern spirituality, and a lot of the people that came to this particular ashram would file in. There was lots of people, hundreds, and it happened to be on the date of a Hindu celebration, a religious day. So there was extra people who had come in from the village, and this is rural South India. So, when I say village, I mean village, like barefoot, farmers and with their kids and their families and all their stuff. And we're sitting on the floor, and I'm sitting cross-legged, and we're waiting for the guru to comes out. And usually the guru comes out after a while. I'm sitting there at first trying to keep my back straight, trying to just maintain posture, but it's hot and I'm starting to sweat. And then more people are piling in, and villagers are just like, I feel like people are touching me from all sides now. It's getting really cramped. And one person picks up his kid and puts him on my lap for a second, just it's the East, there's no like boundaries really for physical space compared to the West. And then the bugs started, and I'm like, oh, flies, oh, like this is so awful being here, and then the guru came out, and then there was a moment where it inverted, where something inverted, where I externalized a lot of my physical discomfort onto the villagers that had crowded around me, and I'm like, oh, you guys are crowding me and smelly and stinky and bugs and this and that. And then in a second, it was inverted. It was my internal state that was making that happen. And everybody else was clean and serene and spaced out perfectly. It just shifted in a second. And it was a reflection showing me that what you're experiencing is your internal state, and my internal state was uncomfortable and agoraphobic and just, not present and happy, just sitting in my own skin. And you were talking about gratitude, and I'm 42 now, and I've just learned this lesson, somewhat recently in the last couple of years. But if my internal state is gratitude, my external experience is the opposite of that ashram experience with the bugs and the crowding and the irritation. I find that the external circumstances begin to match what I'm reflecting, what I have, and same like you. I started, Brendon gave me the suggestion to start writing a gratitude list, and I struggled with it at first, but then it took, and it transformed everything, and I take a little instruction from our other friend Nick, who does the 5 Fs. He looks at a life, by breaking things out under categories: family, friends, fitness, food, fun, faith. I do 5. I group a couple, uh, and that's what I write in my gratitude list. What I'm in faith. How have I progressed in my spirituality? Finance. What did I do to further my family's income today? Family. Did I spend time with my daughter and my wife? What was that like? Fitness. Did I take care of this body? And if I did, I write, oh, this is all the good stuff that has happened in this category today, recently. And it's brought me to a place very, very similar to what you were talking about, where, like, I'm grateful for eyesight, for temperature, for the sun, for, just existence. And, through some of the esoteric work, I'll call it, that we've done, meditated on and contemplated the idea of nothing, of emptiness, of stillness. The closer I get or the more I meditate on the idea of emptiness, the more everything feels like a gift, because everything that exists on some level was once nothing, and so every atom of creation is a gift that we've given ourselves in this universe that is all mind, where we get to imagine and play out and enact all our spiritual fantasies in 3D.
I find it interesting that the world, the universe gives us opportunities to really test if what we're saying is true.
What do you mean?
I say I want to be love and kind and compassion, and I find recently, as much as I love my fiance, there are things that are being said between us that are really getting under my skin at times. And I'm thinking, well, isn't this interesting? We've been together for close to 7 years, and now it's really some of this intimacy, or the touching of intimacy, is riling up a little bit of something. And I don't know, there's something about this conversation that's making me think about it, because there's a piece of me that wants to be petty at times and go, whatever that is. And whenever, because, the finger, when you do a finger, you got the other ones pointing back at you. So it's a reflection of like where my own mind is. And it's like, are you really being what you say you want to be? And part of love is loving yourself and having appropriate boundaries.
A relationship is amazing spiritual practice.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's just it's a good place to be. There's an author person that was really big in the 90s. I don't know where he is these days, but he wrote a few books back in the 90s. His name was David Data, and he wrote a book about the way of the superior man. In one of his chapters, a very straightforward read. You could read it in an hour and a half. And But one of the chapters is don't wish for her to be easy, in reflection to a woman in your realm. Not that Christine's hard, because she isn't. That's one of the things that's been great about our relationship, is that we often gel with a lot of things, and just things come together really good with us. And our relationship has shifted in the last 6 months, and and got engaged and some other stuff. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of the right words, but there's a shift in our relationship, how we relate to one another, and it's sometimes it actually is making me think, how can I be more playful and come from more curiosity now that I'm thinking about it? Because there's that petty piece of me that wants to fight a bit, and then, okay, how can I make this playful and still have boundaries around it, and so that both our needs are met. Because I generally get some of why she does and says what she does. I might not always like some of how it's said, but I get why. And it's very beautiful. It's not boring. It's given me perspective, right?
Curiosity, if you're curious, you really can't be unhappy, in the same moment. Our curiosity shifts our reality from a problem in front of us to happiness and appreciation for the moment.
I can have moments of also being able to observe myself from outside of myself and see a situation for more than just me and the filters I tend to put on things. And that's also a fun place to be, have that moment of pause and see it from a third person perspective. There's me, there's them, and then there's some objective truth that's probably in the middle. The more I come from that place, the more open I am to what may be or is. So anyways, it's just, I don't know. It's just an interest. I don't know why that even popped up for me, but somewhere in the conversation, it's just a place where I am at the moment. And it's fun to be there. Especially with such a beautiful soul. She is a beautiful soul. And I just enjoy her in so many ways. Yeah. I don't want to monopolize this conversation, because I can talk pretty well for a long time. I don't know if there's any.
You're our guest. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I relate to the marriage stuff, and I came to a realization that my wife makes me better, regardless of if she's good or bad in a particular situation. And there's lots of, we've had a lot of love, but we've also had a lot of friction. And I think in a relationship, it's very easy to have an idea of how how they should behave. And then when they don't behave that way, there's discomfort. And then, I'm like you, I want to be petty, and I wrestle with the urge to be petty and let it go. And what is this? And how should I be? And Brendon, we had a conversation once about unconditional love, and I'm like, well, how do you do that in this instance? And you said how you interact with your daughter. It clicked. It made sense. That certainly in my life, I've had a lot of times where I was not living right, talking right, being right. I needed to have my process. I needed to touch the darkness in order to find the light. And so if someone were to love me, they would have to love that whole story. They would have to understand that this is a being that was in the dark and then found the light, and this is where they're at right now. And that's loving the whole person. And I think I had to realize that true unconditional love is accepting somebody for where they are, and not doing the best to let go of expectations. And that doesn't mean there aren't boundaries and there aren't disagreements, there aren't all that stuff, but bringing it back to that idea, like all the good and all the bad makes me better. Because if I interact with my wife and I see all the good and I see a lot of good, that's good that I have in me, because that's being reflected back to me. Oh, you're a very affectionate person, you're very loving, you're very kind. If I can see that, then on some level that's within me. And conversely, on the negative side, and I can give a silly example. I would want her to watch this podcast and and be like, oh, it was great, I loved it so much. And let's say that she doesn't do that, doesn't watch it, or watches it and doesn't give a good comment. And then now I'm upset, and now I want to be petty and be like, you should have, encouraged and you didn't, and all that stuff. Well, what does that tell me about me? That I'm sitting here waiting for acknowledgement and accolades, or does it mean that I don't believe in what I'm doing and I need external validation? And so regardless of what the stimulus is, I find in relationships or otherwise, it's always a really helpful tool for calibrating where am I with this particular situation? Like nothing is upsetting in a vacuum, I guess.
Everything's neutral.
Yeah.
And we were sort of slapping meaning onto things.
Yeah, that there's a silly like kid joke thing where you say you make somebody say silk 10 times or 100 times, whatever, and so they go silk, 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 and then you ask them, what does a cow drink? And they always go milk. And cows don't drink milk. They drink water, but like if you've set your mind a certain way, like everything is gonna, all the following thoughts are gonna just be funneled along that same pathway, and sometimes those are the lenses that we put on, that we put our flavor on experience and think it's reality.
Well,
That reminds me. Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry.
I was just going to say another big shift that I had several years ago was someone telling me I was too realistic. And I didn't know what that meant, at the time. And what I really discovered after weeks and months of it coming and going out of my consciousness, that my idea of what realistic was just my filters of and perception of the world. And when I changed my perception of the world, the reality shifted. And to go back to the point I was making earlier, paranoia, which is the world or the universe is out to get me, as opposed to pronoia, which is the universe is there for my highest and best good. That's my twist on the definition. You can look it up. It might be worded slightly differently. Coming from that place, if it's for my highest and best good, even if it feels not great or a little tough, it's there for something, for my benefit. I'm starting to wrestle a little bit with like what really free will is in this realm. And it feels to me like a lot of free will has to do with how we perceive things happening in our realm. So we have a choice. It can be good or it can be bad. It can be somewhere in the middle. And I choose that it's for my benefit, and not really, and labeling it less, because it still could be conceived one way or the other. And with that, it's made things when I don't like them a little more palatable, and when I do like them, like I don't what's the word? Not emphasizes, but makes it greater. I can't think of the word. It makes my worldview and my world better. So, anyways, that's one of the other things that really came to me, and it's a very small thing, but when you make a shift and it becomes your way of thinking, it has a powerful effect. It has had a powerful effect in my life. And from what I've talked with others, some of them have had a similar effect, and it's been fun to recognize.
That reminds me of when my great grandmother was preparing to leave her body. She was close to that time in her life. She was from Italy, and in the end, she didn't really seem to speak much English. She spoke a little, and I remember being there. I was young, like elementary school. We went to the nursing home where she was at, which was nice for a nursing home, and it's still, a nursing home with the smells and sights that you see. And it was hard walking in to go see my nonna in her room, because everyone was at that stage in life, and I was a little kid. And I remember going in, and she always had her rosary beads in her hand, and she was always praying when I saw her. And she was sitting there, and she had her walker and this little carrying thing that she made over her walker to put her stuff in. And there was a plastic daffodil in the walker. And I watched her tell my mother, or my mom said something, Nani, I like your flower. And she said, Mary, it's a miracle. I don't have to give it water. It doesn't need sunlight, and it stays alive. It's so beautiful. And we kind of laughed at her like she was being silly. And later in my life, like I had an experience with, a health crisis, and I got what she meant. Like everything in this creation is a miracle, and to experience it is a miracle. And that kind of goes back to the concept of gratitude and time and timelessness.
That's a powerful place to be when everything's a miracle.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
It's powerful. It's like I always am trying to bring myself back there when I remember,
Speaking of our men's retreats and real estate, one of the gentlemen that attends with us is going to be over at my place in about 10 minutes to talk about real estate, but maybe with a spiritual twist. So I do need to wrap this up pretty soon.
Derek, thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
I hope you come back and do it again.
Anytime. Just let me know.
Yeah, how can we
It's been
do this? Will we do this again? I like that.
Are you into it, Derek?
I'm open. Yeah, just let me know when it works, when's a good time, and we'll make it work.
It's something I just wanted to close with. Anything, this is for anyone watching, anything that we said, if it resonates for you, it's yours. And I hope that it's beneficial. And if it doesn't resonate for you, just put it down. No harm, no foul. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on. It's been fun.